I want to welcome everybody. My name is Fernando Rojuela, for those of you who do not know who I am, and on behalf of my colleagues in the Colloquium committee, which includes Dr. Barbara Hillers, Amanda Luke, and Ben Bridges, we thank you for spending your afternoon with us and to listen to this very engaging research project that Dr. Margaret Magat is going to talk to us about. And while many of us are not on the Bloomington campus, but many of us are, I do want to express on behalf of my partners and we still wish to acknowledge and honor the Miyamaki, the Lenape, the Boat-Wadmik, and the Sawanwa, whose ancestral homelands and resources Indiana University, Bloomington is built. So thank you for paying attention and participating. And at this moment, I'd like to pass the mic to Dr. Soli Marotero, who was the muscle behind this talk. So Soli, it's all yours.
Thank you, Fernando. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce my dear friend, Dr. Margaret Magat. I'm so excited that she's sharing her work with us today, and it's just so nice to see her here in this venue, even if it's Zoom. So Dr. Margaret Magat is a folklorist who received her PhD from the University of Pennsylvania and MA in folklore from UC Berkeley. She currently works in the field of historic preservation and cultural resource management. Her interests include foodways, intangible cultural heritage, the politics of space and place, and Asian American folklore. Her work on Asian American stereotypes surrounding basketball star Jeremy Lin was published in the Journal of American Folklore, translated in China, and appeared in Cultural Heritage. Wenhua Yichang, so I probably messed that up, my apologies. She has also published in the Material Culture Review, Pedagogia Historica, Western Folklore, and Proverbium. Her work on Italy's Filipino domestic workers and their transnational cultural practices have appeared in books such as Domestic Service and the Formation of European Identity, Understanding the Globalization of Domestic Work, 16th to 21st Centuries, and Problemas Metodológicas en Antropología, published in Madrid, Spain. In the field of cultural resource management, she has written and edited numerous cultural impact reports for environmental assessments in Hawaii and other states. She has been the recipient of a Diversity Scholar Award from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the B. Roeder Award from the Association of Western Folklorists, a Gerald Davis Award from the American Folklore Society, and a William Penn and UC Berkeley Fellowship, as well as a Foreign Language Area Studies Fellowship and Italian Cultural Institute Award. Her current projects include an Asian American folklore reader, an article of Karen memes and Asian Americans for the Journal of Folklore Research, and she's also a co-host of the upcoming podcast Yellow and Brown Tales, Asian American Folklife under University of Pennsylvania's Asian American Studies program, Balut, Fertilized Eggs, and the Making of a Culinary Capital in the Filipino Diaspora, published by Bloomsbury 2019, is her first book. And I am going to put in the chat the discount code, because it's about to come out in paperback. So make sure to copy that and paste it and get the book. And then please join me in welcoming Dr. Margaret Magat.
Thank you so much, Soli. That was a great introduction, and I hope I don't leave you down. But first of all, before I share my screen, I just wanted to thank everyone today for spending part of their Friday with me. And I also would like to thank the Colloquium committee for inviting me to share my work. So while I'm doing that, I will share the screen now. I wanted to thank the Colloquium committee for inviting me, and I'd like to thank the Department of Folklore and Ethnomusicology, the Journal of Folklore Research, IU Food Studies Institute, and the Asian Cultural Center for co-sponsoring this talk. Indiana University's Folklore and Ethnomusicology Department has nurtured some of the field's most distinguished folklorists. IU was also the graduate home of my mentor, Dr. Alan Dundes, who was also Dr. Solomar Otero's mentor. It is an honor to be giving this talk for his alma mater. This work is extracted from my book, Balut, Fertilized Eggs, and the Making of Culinary Capital in the Filipino Diaspora. Balut has been called weird, gross, and disgusting and rated as the #1 of the most terrifying foods in the world by the website crack.com. But rather than portraying this everyday street food in Southeast Asia exactly for what it is, an embryonic duck or chicken egg eaten as a nutritional snack, the depiction of balut online and in the media is one marked mostly with derision and hysteria. I wrote my book to counter that narrative and provide cultural context. Studying this food and its consumption reveals interesting reasons why people eat what they do. It can illuminate historical experiences of Filipino Americans, show the rise of culinary nationalism and the performance of identity. It can highlight the role of the media and new technology in appropriating this traditional foodway and how eating this exoticized food is one way some people reap culinary capital or social prestige and recognition. I'd like to begin with my background to provide context. I am a first-generation Filipina immigrant, born in Manila and raised in the Philippines, Tonga, Canada, and the US. As a young child in Kentucky and later a teenager in California, I grew up not seeing aspects of my culture or anyone of Asian heritage on television or film besides Kung Fu, where the lead actor was white. So you could imagine how excited I was to see Balut on Fear Factor back in 2002. It was something familiar to me, and I thought Filipino culture had finally made it on primetime TV. But I quickly found out that Balut's television debut was just for emphasizing what many saw as a repulsive and fearsome food that would take at least $50,000 for people to eat it. After 2002, an array of travel and food shows, blogs, and videos followed showing countless repetitions of balut being regurgitated and mentioned as a horrible food with little cultural context. To me, such portrayals led to quick judgments of Philippine culture and, by extension, judgments of people of Asian heritage. I wanted to set the record straight on what is balut, to tackle xenophobia through the lens of food. Balut is an example of food waste, or the practices and beliefs surrounding food and eating defined by scholar Don Yoder in the 1970s, well before fields like sociology, media studies, and cultural anthropology claimed food studies as their own. Food waste was further described by folklorist Lucy Long to mean, quote, not only what people eat, but when, where, why, how, and with whom, unquote. How is balut being used in the construction and performance of identity in online videos and in real time? Who is eating it and why? I also apply Nakarato and Lebesco's concept of culinary capital in this study, which refers to the prestige bestowed upon individuals when they show their ability to consume or prepare food that is idealized or vilified by the surrounding culture. First, a quick summary of what is balut. Here is my slide here. It's usually a 17-day-old fertilized egg, either duck or chicken, with a partially formed body including bones, feathers, and a beak. A chick hatches out at 28 days, so the older a balut egg is, the more developed. 17 days is the preferred age for Filipinos, while elsewhere in Southeast Asia, it is eaten around 19 days old or older. It is best eaten warm with salt, while Vietnamese people prefer it with a coriander-like herb called rau rum. In the Philippines, it is sold in stores, in transportation hubs, on street corners, or by roving vendors who signal their wares with a distinctive call, balut. This portable snack is consumed by people of all ages and has been described as being popular in the Philippines as hot dogs in the US. However, not everyone eats it, and there are class distinctions that govern its consumption. It is a social food, usually eaten in parties or drinking gatherings. Balut is recommended as an energy booster for those who are fatigued and hungry, a brain food for students, and calcium-rich food for pregnant women and the sick. In the US, where there's an estimated 4.1 million Filipino Americans, it is found in Asian grocery stores, farmers markets, and Filipino restaurants. Its reputation as the Filipino Viagra has made it popular with men from other backgrounds who now consume the fertilized egg as a natural alternative. It is believed to even cure headaches, according to one of my interviewees who sell balut and prescribe it as such. Legendary culinarian historian and food writer Doreen Gamboa Fernandez, who has written much of what we know about Filipino food and who we are forever indebted, once wrote that there was a whole world around balut, the process of producing it, preparing it, consuming it. The 17-day-old balut is but one stage of several in the production of embryonic eggs. Eggs that have cracked or which are infertile are enjoyed as penoy, while eggs that have spoiled with a strong sulfur smell are fried or used to top sweet rice cakes called bibingkang abnoy. Everything is used, and Filipino foodways is characterized by a sustainable nose-to-tail approach long before this became a trend in the West. Balut, a cheap source of protein for the many who are poor in the Philippines, can be found at $4 an egg in high-end restaurants. Balut is never eaten raw. Most of the time, they're consumed like ordinary boiled eggs and best served warm with condiments like hot sauce or vinegar with chilies. Like boiled eggs, it has a yolk and an egg white called albumin, but fresh balut will also have the soup at the top as well as the embryo, sometimes wrapped in the white, which is referred to as balut sa puti, preferred by balut connoisseurs. A typical method of eating is tapping the wide end of the egg, peeling the shell and also the membrane, then putting on a little salt and pepper and sipping the hot liquid, which tastes like concentrated chicken soup. Once the soup is gone, then one peels off the rest of the egg. Many choose to close their eyes when they're eating, and the custom is to eat it in 2 or 3 bites, certainly not like the drawn-out performances online. I'll show a little clip of a video that I found that was one of the least offensive ones that demonstrate how to eat balut. But just keep in mind, this was done in a high-end restaurant and with a fork, and that's not normally the way that it is done. Here we go.
This is balut.
Okay.
It's fertilized duck egg. Really interesting. Oh,
I guess that's totally right,
I
right?
mean,
Okay, so now we're gonna eat the duck.
balut.
Balut.
Oh. Hi, I'm Cynthia Casasola. I'm here at my favorite restaurant, Maharlika, in the East Village, and I am the balut expert. So I'm here to teach you how to eat balut the right way, in case you haven't eaten it yet or have been too scared to try it.
Balut?
I've never heard of balut.
Kind of sounds like the bear from Jungle Book.
I would guess maybe it's a fish dish.
It's balut.
Really?
My big sister here is a bad Filipino. She has never had balut before. So this is called balut. It is a fertilized duck egg.
I've had a drink, so I think I can do it.
It's known to be an aphrodisiac, the Filipino Viagra. In the Philippines, you will actually hear this kind of cat call for balut. You'll hear balut.
Instinctively, I'm thinking, crack this egg. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. And, first step, you're going to get a spoon and puncture the top. You put the whiter part on top, just a little bit, and you're going to peel this top layer.
Wow, I'm just peeking inside as I go.
You're doing great. Yeah, take that top layer.
This all like spongy part. Oh god.
Puncture. Yes, perfect. So now you have the soup. That's very good. Second step is to sip that delicious soup.
Wait, I'm sorry. What's happening?
We're drinking
The soup. Okay. Delicious, actually.
Well, it's warm, a little salty. Tastes like something that I won't say on camera.
what? I am
A
very
little bit.
curious.
A little bit.
What are you talking about?
Just leaving it at that.
And then you have the yolk. So I'll just use my fork, I'll dip it in salt, and I'll eat. Dip.
Very good, actually.
This is
Out of
balut.
there,
Okay.
This is
move on
balut.
to the next slide. Okay. I first started to do research on balut in the late 1990s, when hardly anything was written on it. When I started seeing it more and more in television and online, I decided to investigate balut consumption in the 21st century. My methodology consisted of participant observation and semi-structured interviews. I visited a duck farm in Gonzales, California, interviewed balut distributors and vendors, and eating contestants in New York and San Francisco, and created an online survey for people who eat balut. This is a slide of Armin Nicolas at the Fremont Market. I also observed the buying and selling of balut in 2 farmers markets in the San Jose Flea Market, where a large number of people buying balut are Mexican Americans as well as Filipino Americans. In addition, I drew from observations of social media blogs and television shows. Nowadays, as anyone with a computer can see, typing the words balut and balut challenge will pull up numerous videos of people from all over the world eating balut. This explosion of material in the form of blogs and videos have been seen by millions of viewers. Sometimes the Filipino cultural belief that balut is an aphrodisiac and a natural Viagra for men is explained, but a majority of the times it is not. What these videos share in common is the viewer is invited to participate as the performer eats balut for the first time or an experienced eater teaches someone how to eat it. They're usually close-up shots of the consumer's face, with the egg usually torn apart for maximum exposure. I refer to such productions as balut challenge videos. The videos featuring people of non-heritage eating balut non-Filipino heritage eating balut tend to be more popular and viewed more than videos of Filipinos eating balut. The more outrageous the images, the more views the video generates. Balut makes it easy to monetize videos, and a whole cottage industry has emerged abusing it. Also online, but different from balut challenge videos, are balut eating contests. I found that to examine such phenomena as balut eating contests, one has to look beyond previous ethnic group analysis. Rather, I use Alan Dunny's definition of, quote, any group whatsoever who share at least one common factor, unquote, and Zhuan Zhang's concept of folkloric identity to shed light upon these diasporic and transnational cultural practices being performed by people who may or may not be affiliated with an ethnic group. Also useful here is performance theory. Food, after all, is a performance medium. According to Barbara Kirschenblatt Gimblett, while we eat to satisfy hunger and nourish our bodies, some of the most radical effects occur precisely when food is disassociated from eating and eating from nourishment, unquote. Having balut present allows a performance to emerge, whether one is establishing a Filipino identity or performing to illustrate oneself as an omnivorous foodie or acting as a competitive eater. Balut has been enjoyed as a delicacy in the Philippines for at least 2 centuries, with one of the earliest citations dated in 1834, when a visiting American diplomat described the numerous ducks in Pateros, a town associated with balut, which he called Ducktown. Since then, balut has been eaten by Filipinos everywhere, not just for nutrition, but also to mark imagined ties to the motherland. In the US, the marketing of balut by top Filipino restaurants plays with the nationalist tendencies of Filipino migrants and the desire of others to consume the exotic as a form of culinary tourism. In 2019, the Philippines population was estimated to be about 109 million. About 11% of Filipinos work as overseas Filipino workers or OFWs in over 100 countries, with the overall diaspora population of OFWs estimated to be twice the population of New Zealand. Where there are Filipinos, there is balut. It can be found in Greenland, United Arab Emirates, Italy, and Hong Kong, as well as the Czech Republic, as an example. Philippine cuisine today reflects Malay, Chinese, the 300 years of colonization under Spain via Mexico, and the half century of American colonization. Sour, salty, sweet, and sometimes bitter is the flavor profile of the cuisine. Spanish influenced dishes are usually served in fiestas, and Chinese and Malay dishes are for the everyday meals. It has been called a fusion cuisine before fusion became trendy, and food writer Jonathan Gold described it as being at once familiar and unlike anything that one has had before, with Asian and Pacific Asian flavors at its core, unquote. Doreen Fernandez noted that any foreign food can be indigenized and become Filipino once tamed. There's no mistaking a dish as being Filipino if it has been indigenized by the citrus fruit calamansi or the ubiquitous fish sauce called patis that provides much of the underlying umami flavor of dishes, or other numerous flavor adjusters such as vinegar, fermented shrimp paste called bagoong, or soy sauce. One is expected to adjust the seasonings of Filipino dishes using one's taste. There are many narratives within my family and from others of traveling with a bottle of shrimp paste in one's purse and bringing vinegar and garlic to restaurants or other places just to ensure that dish would become familiar and tamed according to cultural taste buds. Composed of 7,000 islands with mountains, streams, valleys, and bays that influence regional varieties in cuisine, the Philippine archipelago has three main regions of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and its people speak more than 150 dialects. In Luzon, sour flavors are particularly savored. Sinigang, a stew with fish or meat and vegetables, can be cooked with any number of sour fruit, green guava, tamarind, or santol, for example. One Philippine website devoted to sinigang listed 39 ways that different sour fruits can make the dish. Other well-known dishes like adobo also vary depending on the region. Typically a stew made with soy sauce and vinegar as well as garlic, it can also be made with coconut milk and cooked without soy sauce, only using one of the many varieties of vinegar available in the Philippines. It is clear that variation is abundant. So why has balut become so identified with the Philippines when there is much variety in the cuisine? The regionalized nature of Philippine cuisine is one reason why it is hard to pin down a national dish. Online, the topic of Filipino food and identity seems to be a popular one, with varying but similar sentiments about a Filipino identity crisis. This manifests itself on the world stage with a lack of signature Filipino dish that everyone can agree is Filipino. Along comes balut, which is unmistakably itself, as authentic a food can get. Unlike adobo, which can vary in taste with different vinegars and different meats, balut cannot be varied in its embryonic essence, although it can be buried in pies and deep fried on a stick. Perhaps this is why it has become such a potent marker of Filipino-ness. Balut is associated with a range of rich symbolism and beliefs, ranging from the sensual to the supernatural. Among males and females of Filipino heritage, it seems that balut's powers as an aphrodisiac is for men only and is referred to as, quote, panglakas ng tuhod, unquote, or strengthening the knees, so to speak, providing energy and virility. Its meaning can differ depending on who is eating it and the context. Although men consume it often as an aphrodisiac, women or children who eat it may sometimes be subjected to taunts or teased about being an aswang. An aswang is a legendary, self-segmenting creature that feeds on people's entrails and prefers to eat unborn children. Like balut, it is a liminal creature full of ambiguity. The two are connected by cultural narratives, such as eating balut can make one into an aswang, which a few of my survey respondents mentioned. The belief in the aswang is found throughout Southeast Asia. In the Philippines, however, the aswang is usually portrayed as a woman. The gendering of the supernatural creature occurred during Spanish colonization of the archipelago beginning in 1565, when missionaries effectively cast the once powerful indigenous female shamans known as the Bailan as the aswang in an effort to take away their respected status. Exploring the connections of this foodway balut to other cultural beliefs such as the aswang and its aphrodisiac appeal reveal how food has communicative powers in exposing social relations, inclusion and exclusion of others, and cultural beliefs on sex. To enforce the idea that it is only an aphrodisiac for men is problematic, for it relegates women as objects without agency to perform their sexuality. It restricts men to a rigid type of masculinity and precludes the inclusion of other scripts and other possibilities of being. Now, part of the debate surrounding balut is the fact that it is not an easy sight to behold. Whether 17 or days or 21 days, the fertilized egg has developed to this stage where it's clearly a bird about to be hatched. But even when not developed into balut, eggs can sometimes provoke apprehension in some individuals due to the fact that they represent life. Balut has been considered as a symbol of the life force, according to Venetian Newell, and fertilized eggs may be seen as even more of a life force, even for those who eat balut as part of their cultural practice. To eat balut, then, is to risk being judged harshly by those who believe it is wrong to eat a creature that was never given the chance to live. Now, there are distinct variances between balut consumption in the Philippines and in the Filipino diaspora. In the US, balut consumption by those of Filipino heritage are eaten for enjoyment, but it also falls along the lines of culinary nationalism. This is a picture of Romeo, who won the contest 7 years straight eating balut at the Pistahan contest in San Francisco. What happens when one consumes the egg in the diaspora? Unlike other foods where preparation, ingredients, and location are essential for the food to become the ideal dish, like bouillabaisse in Marseille, France, the fertilized egg somehow communicates a landscape, much like the French ingredients in a pot au feu. Yet, how does it do that when the egg itself is from elsewhere other than the Philippines? I argue that balut can be taken away from the motherland and be eaten anywhere in the world, but still retain its power to, quote, authenticate, unquote, the eater to feel Filipino or obtain honorary citizenship via the act of consumption. Sorry, lost my page, but your patience. I'll just continue. So just to ask the question, what is the purpose of such contests? What is being communicated during these competitive eating events, and why use balut? Eating contests have long been a familiar standby in American fairs, with Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest dating back to 1916, according to some accounts. Pie eating contests are even older, with the first written account occurring in 1878. Although it isn't pies or hot dogs being eaten, but balut, the format in this contest is the same as an all-American pie or hot dog eating contest. The contests take place within the festival frame, a liminal period where one is presented a moment in and out of time, where society is unstructured, and where social life emerges in what Turner called a form of communitas, and individuals are more equals. In the frame of a festival, contestants are inclined to try new and strange things that they may not even consider during ordinary time. During festivals, we become what Roger Abrams termed, quote, equal opportunity eaters, unquote. This may make festivals the perfect place for Filipino Americans to introduce balut to outsiders, to turn around and dominate mainstream taste buds, so to speak. Watching this contest or performances, I wondered why balut was chosen to be the subject of eating contests. After all, there are other foods that could have been selected. Why balut, described by a New York Times article as a, quote, quote, frankenfood, unquote. Balut is the feature food because it can provoke a reaction, act as a lightning rod, and a touchstone of the current social, political, and economic context experienced by Filipino Americans today. Although traditionally a food eaten with friends in drinking get togethers or by others in the privacy of their own home, it is now out in the open with the embryo to see. The contests are kind of a performance that uses the marker of food to construct identity as Filipinos in America via the outing of a once private insider food. Balut contests are places where, for some Filipino Americans, cultural negotiation is taking place. It is negotiation from Filipino Americans who want to be finally heard and seen in their adopted homeland. It is a way to be noticed and situated among other immigrant groups, as well as participate in one of the hallmarks of American culture. After all, what is more American than an eating contest held during a fair or a festival? But the contests are not just limited to people of Filipino heritage. Everyone is welcome to try balut. In viral videos, people from all over are consuming balut. So how can one analyze such performative events? Whether in contests or in videos, there's no shared identity needed to consume balut in a folkloric practice. Such folklore in practice can occur as long as there is one factor uniting a group. For the balut contest spectators and performers, the folk group they form has the common denominator as festival goers, a shared language of English, and a shared knowledge of American pop culture. They may have different differential identities, as some may be Filipino American or some may be not, but they are all nevertheless drawn together in their desire to consume the spectacle of people wolfing down embryonic eggs. Here, the idea of folkloric identity is useful as it can assist in the analysis of such phenomena where the cultural practice being shared is a function of a folkloric identity that's influenced by technology and the media and rooted in migration and transnational habitation. The Speedy Balut Contest in Maui, Hawaii, is part of the Phil-Am's Heritage Celebration each October. It first began in 2010. The Hawaii contest only allows contestants who are experienced balut eaters, and the emphasis is on speed, not quantity. In this clip, the music chosen during the contest is the Black Eyed Peas hit song Bebot, which in slang means hot chick, and it celebrated band member Apple Diap's Filipino background. The choice of music and the rules combined to create a contest affirming culinary nationalism. And play a small segment.
Ready? Yeah! People, you ready? When I say talo, you guys go. Isa, dalawa, talo, go! Oh, hello, hello, oh. Bebo, 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 yeah, bebo, bebo, eat it up now. Bebo, bebo, come on, bebo, bebo, come on, bebo, bebo, eat it up. Bebo, 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 ikaw ay Filipino, 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 Filipino. Here we go now. Hoy, oh, wait, pakinggan niyo ako. Wait, hold on.
So that was just a short segment just to give you a taste of what a contest could look like.
Ready? Yeah!
That balut has become a symbol of the new Filipino movement and new visibility for the second biggest Asian American group in the United States was demonstrated by PJ Quesada, MC of Pistahan's 2017 Balut Eating Contest. Shortly before the contest started, he challenged a mixed audience of non-Filipinos and Filipinos alike to take a more active role in promoting the culture. PJ described how balut was used as, quote, a tool of oppression, unquote, when it was featured in Fear Factor. And here I'll play a sound clip from that.
It means the world the wrong message. Because we don't take American foods like chicken and put it on Fear Factor. It's not fair. So what they did is they used that food as an example of what Filipino Filipinos are awesome. And we eat balut because it feels good. So I encourage everybody, if someone is squeamish about balut, turn it around and tell them no. You just don't have a developed confidence. And then take them under your wing and teach them how to eat it. You show them that there's nothing to be afraid of with Filipino food. Can you guys do that for me? Can you do that for the Philippine culture? Can you do that for our kids?
PJ's remarks and events involving balut, such as a petition to ban it from New York restaurants, which did not succeed, reveal that negative attention to the delicacy is being seen as an assault on Filipino heritage and culture, not just an attack on the food itself. There's tension between the way balut eating has been marketed by some Filipino Americans and how it is portrayed as a strange, weird food in Western traditional and social media. PJ's comments that balut was used as a, quote, tool of oppression, unquote, did not originate solely from fear factor's portrayal. Filipino American scholars have examined how Filipino food was treated in colonial times. American reformers pushed processed foods and devalued native foods in the Philippines. And when early Filipino migrants arrived in the US in the 1920s and 1930s, this continued when their foodways were portrayed as barbaric. In the years before World War II, an estimated 150,000 Filipinos had already arrived in the US. They were excluded from the New Deal. So to cope with the Depression, many Filipinos banded together and lived in one place to share living and food expenses, eating whatever food they could glean from campos or canneries. Pigs' necks, tails, and feet and fish heads were supplemented by wild vegetables and illegal hunting around the Delta. By 1930s, Filipinos in America were portrayed in the media as having a squalid lifestyle with an uncivilized standard of eating to match. The treatment they endured can be seen as a form of cultural imperialism, where the colonized Filipino people's cultural practices and foodways were subjugated in favor of Western practices and beliefs. Food has long been used by folk groups to construct and denote identity. But it's usually the community who selects the types of food to reveal those aspects of that group's identity to the public, while other foods are kept within the community. In the case of balut, when it appeared in Fear Factor and subsequent other shows like Survivor, the Filipino American community had no say over how they wished to represent a food associated with their culture. The producers didn't care about a more accurate or nuanced portrayal, as extremism and shock value in reality television is what sells. This is increasingly found in American popular culture and society, where outrageousness is harnessed for economic and cultural capital by people of all types. In this climate, balut, seen as an extreme food by many, was the one showcased. The grand introduction of Filipino food in the beginning of the 21st century became the stereotypical first impression that many had about Filipino cuisine. The complex feelings of hiya or embarrassment that Filipinos feel over food such as balut is worsened for many each time balut is portrayed in a negative light in some TV show or YouTube video. It became a signifier of Filipino identity and otherness for those outside the culture. To consume balut then in eating contests can be seen as a way to fight back and own the food rather than be embarrassed or apologize for it. Eating it is to enforce one's pride in being a Filipino, to revel in the consumption of an insider food that is no longer being hidden from outsiders. Such events as balut eating contests provide Filipino Americans pleasure and agency to propagate selected cultural practices and defy the mainstream stigmatism of their culture and cuisine. Filipino American presence is only beginning to be noticed in the United States. Their cultural practices and their foodways are still painted with the foreign patina that hangs around ethnic groups still lobbying for acceptance in mainstream America. It was only around 2017 when restaurant critic Jonathan Gold announced that Filipino cuisine was having a moment in fine dining. Before then, Filipino cuisine in the US was mostly relegated to fast casual eateries. Now that Filipino cuisine is on the radar of foodies, there is a new type of Filipino restaurant available, the upscale fine dining establishments that are marked by fusion and creative touches from chefs of Filipino heritage who have been trained in French techniques and who have only recently become encouraged to cook their own cuisine. But Filipino food still has a long way to go in its journey away from the ethnic factor. Part of the reason why it is considered as the in cuisine at the moment is due to the fact that it has long been misunderstood and ignored. Its exotic factor appeals to the omnivore's desires to consume it in an act that may be seen as an example of what Lisa Heldke termed cultural food colonialism. Perhaps when there's an abundance of Filipino restaurants in every state, like there are Japanese or Chinese restaurants or Thai eateries, will the cuisine be truly considered mainstream? Whether featured as a highlight in competitive eating contests or trumpeted in high-end restaurants as a main attraction, balut is being used by some Filipino Americans to hijack back some agency, despite the fact that stressing its bizarre reputation plays on emphasizing difference, and it can be accused of commodifying otherness in pursuit of economic gain. Nevertheless, these events can be seen as a kind of resistance that can beget change for a few fortunate groups via economic and culinary capital. If otherness is used as a lure to bring in people to eat foods they otherwise may not try, then that can be used to bring in transformative moments where the eater may be subjected to learning not just what the food she or he is eating from, but where it came from, what migratory movements, colonial upheavals, and political forces caused it to bring the food to the plate. Through the commodification of cultural practices such as balut eating, money flows in along with cultural capital. The recipients of this flow, restaurateurs of Filipino themed restaurants, chefs of Filipino heritage, any savvy foodie from other ethnicities, gain economic and culinary capital that they can then parlay into more recognition for their platform. Thank you very much.